Alright, we just kind of ended that last video. Nate ended up having a rim break on the injector. That's what we just got done welding here now. We got him on his way. We ended up pulling this planter outside, and I ran all of our 1/4-inch hoses off of the manifold that's on the front of the tank bracket here. We ended up putting this stuff on in the last video. We've got all that hooked up. We ran our 1/4-inch hoses off of this manifold. We've got row 1 and then we've got row 16. So 1 through 16 1/4-inch hoses going down to each and every seed firmer. Got them running right along the parallel arm, coming in down behind the little mini seed hopper, hooking up right here. So what we're going to do now is we are going to run our power cord that goes from the tractor. We're going to run it down through the hitch of the planter here, run it across, back up through, over to our motors. So we're going to do that now, and then that'll just about wrap this planter up. We want to air pressure the tires, run a grease gun around it, and then we can bring the other planter over and start working on that one. So we'll get after it here. All right, we just about have this job wrapped up. We've got all of our individual lines coming off of the manifold here, going down to each row unit. Now there's some balls that float in the fluid, and this is just how I have the other one set up. I've got a green one in there and a red glass one. And then with the weight of the fertilizer itself, these will float. And it'll give you an idea if you've got a plugged line, these will go right to the top. If your orifice isn't correct, it'll stay down below and whatever else like that. It'll just kind of give you an idea of where your flow is. If they're all the same, all at the same level, that will mean that you're flowing correctly. I have screwed around with the other one extensively with the different balls that come in this kit. And it is a real pain in the ass to deal with. Because you don't know what you've got going on until you switch them all, and I've been back and forth and whatever else like that. So the other system, that's how we've got it set up. We're going to try it that way on this one. There is 2 other balls that they give you, and they give you a chart and all that happy jazz. There's a steel ball, and then there's a lighter orangish one. And I tried just the steel one. I've tried all 3, and I've tried just one, you know, just the light one. And these seem to work good to where they'll kind of float in there. The metal one doesn't even do anything. That one won't even push up. So what we're going to do now is we're going to run, well, we'll show you what it looks like on the back end here. We've got our T-jet mounted. We ended up mounting to the side of the actual frame. We could have ran the hose through alongside the belt meter, and we could have put that T-jet up in here. But the problem with putting the T-jet up in there, if we were to have a leak, it would get inside the belt, the seed belt. If we need to change anything, we got to take this whole meter off. With it out here, we can just get at this guy here. If we've got to plug up and get our diaphragm or our orifice out of there, screw around with that little diaphragm, and we can go from there. I don't think we're gonna run into any trouble with it mounted right here. The other thing that we could have done is we could have mounted this up in here, but this gray hose wasn't long enough. So what we have to do now is we have to fish a power cable down through this arm here. We're gonna run this out through and around and then up to our motor assembly. And then we've got a rheostat switch in the cab that we need to plug into. I've got to take the switch out of this cab unless it's exactly the same as the other one and put it in the other tractor. We'll put the new switch in this one here. So we'll go ahead and fish our wire down through, and then we will get this one finished up, air pressure the tires, run a grease gun around it. This has been greased, but we're gonna grease it again. And we'll roll this one out and bring the other one in. Snarled up mess. Alright, so we've got more than enough wire here. This would be the wire that would come off of, is it this one? No, yeah, that one. Another extension wire, this wire. This wire would attach to the battery. And then we've got a couple of, this is a 10-footer, another 10-footer. This one's 60. How long is, well, let's grab our pigtail here. Where's that at? That's here somewhere. I think it's over here. Here's our pigtail that will hook up to the two motors, and then it's going to plug into the single wire that we ran back the length of the frame. The one in the box was a 60, and this one's a 60. So we'll plug this guy into the motor. We've got one motor here. Where's the other plug? The plug is here. Boy, I hope they're gonna be long enough here. Plug that guy into there, and this other motor will plug in. Like that. And then what we have, we'll probably put a loom holder in here to hold that, and then this end, which I taped this up. I taped this up so that we wouldn't break the latch off of it, pulling it through the frame. So we're gonna coil up some extra length of it here on this end. Then we'll have to coil up the rest on this end here because we don't need all of it. And then we'll be able to plug it right into our switch. Now another thing that we have to have a control or a way to turn this on and off automatically for when we get to the end of the row. They do give you this proximity switch guy here. However, this thing, you can bolt it to a magnet, put it on the side of the planter, and then when you lift it up, it'll shut the system off, but that doesn't work as good. I've got a John Deere one here somewhere that we're going to bolt to one of these parallel arms here, and it'll come against the planter itself. And that's what will turn on and off the motor. So we got some wires to zip tie up. We've got to figure out if we're going to use that switch that's up in the cab, or if we're going to use the new one and swap them over. But I think that switch that's in the cab is the same. Well, I don't see a switch here. I guess I didn't get a switch with this assembly. So, yeah, it doesn't appear that I've got one. So, Alright, so we have our wires pulled through this tube. Our power wire, and then our wire that's going to turn the system on and off for when we lift the planter up out of the ground. Because what this system will be, it'll have a switch up in the cab, which I did find that new one. I took the old one out of the cab, put that in the other tractor so that that'll go with the other planter. We've got a new one on the bench, however, I need to build a bracket for it. This is the same switch that came out. I figured I'd better use the new switch with the new system. If I have any problems with this system, they're going to say, well, it was linked to the old switch. So what we're going to do is cut this piece of sheet metal here. Put a couple of fasteners in there on each side of it. Bolt it to this piece here. And then we've got to have a piece of flat bar bent on like a 90-degree angle, a little more than a 90. Or not quite a 90. And then that'll bolt to the corner post, and then we can just reach up, turn it on when we want it on, and turn it off when we want it off. So that's what this guy is here. We'll get our bracket made and get it bolted on in now. All right, so we have our bracket made, painted, and we used rivets to put the switch onto this bracket. So we'll go ahead and put this bracket up in the cab, get our wires pulled up into there, get that plugged in, and then that part will be done. And then we have to put our switch on the row unit. We've got a John Deere switch, and we'll show you what that's going to look like here. Once I get the actual motor switch up in the cab. Alright, so here's what we have. We have our switch up in the cab, which we're going to show you that here in a second. Got our wire run down through that right hand frame rail over to our motor, and we hooked up our Y to go into each motor with the power cable. And I've got wiring enough for doing this twice. I'm like, well, they gave us some extra wire. So I actually called Schaeffert this morning. I asked them why that is. Why run the Y back here when they've got the Y coming off of the switch up in the cab, which is right here. Maybe some of you guys can clear this up, but they said that the voltage won't be correct bringing the the power back through there and then splitting off at the end of it and going to both motors. They said the voltage won't be correct. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this up the way that they have it designed to be wired together. So I'm going to run the other wire down through this other side. I could run it through there, but I don't have enough, I don't feel I have enough room inside here to get this down through. Maybe we'll try it. Actually, we'll try it, and then I can have all my wires together. So we've got to run another wire down through to hook into the motor. Now, when I originally purchased this, what I wanted to do, being that I've got a tank on each side, I wanted to run one pump off of one tank with one manifold going to one side of the planter. Then I wanted to run my other pump on this other side to do this one. They said, well, that can't be done. It's not going to work correctly. So, well, all right. Because we're trying to keep the pressures all the same, okay. And it might not work that way because we're pushing fluid from both pumps back through one hose back to that manifold. I felt that if I split it up, then I wouldn't have to have one hose going from this tank all the way around to the planter to that, down this side, all the way to the center. I could have just ran one pump right here, put one manifold over here. Would have had to have two filter systems. That's all I would have had to have. So maybe this winter we'll change things around a little bit just so that we don't have to worry about product transferring from one tank to the other. It's going to do that because we've got these valves on these tanks here. Now what I could do is, if I get into a hilly situation, shut one tank off just so that it can't transfer over to the other one. Fill up, shut this one off, let it pump out of that one down a certain ways, get out, shut that one off, turn this one on, vice versa. But that's kind of the reasoning behind having a pump on each side of the planter. So it is what it is here. So we're going to try to run this wire down through that frame. If I can't get it to pull through, I'll have to run it down through this frame here. All right, so we will show you what we have here now. We ended up running our second wire over to our motor. So we have a separate wire going to each motor on that pump assembly. And I've got my Y cable here, zip tied kind of out of the way. We're getting power from the battery of the tractor. Now, this switch here just has a regular toggle switch on it. Right now it's not pumping anything because I don't have the wire plugged in. And we're going to put a disconnect switch on the planter so that when the planter comes out of the ground, it will turn them pumps off. So how this works is when it's an open circuit, it won't run them pumps. They do give you a dummy switch here, a dummy plug. If I plugged this plug in, it would run them motors continuous. So if you're testing the system or something like that, so you haven't got to lower your planter, you can put this guy in there and it'll run the pump manually. So we'll get that unplugged. We'll plug in the wire that goes back to a switch that they give you, or a unit that you can put on the planter. If I can get this damn thing to plug in. being most difficult. Alright, so I needed both hands to get this guy plugged in. So this wire here is going to run back down the hitch of the planter, and what it goes to currently right at the moment is a magnetic device that will come up against the frame of the planter when you raise and lower it. It'll of course turn the row unit off. It's just this guy here. You can hear the pumps going. Here's this little guy right here. You'd put it on your frame somewhere, let it go up against the row unit or something. As the row unit comes up in the air, or as the planter goes up in the air, the row unit would drop against it and it'll shut the pump off. The only problem with this is it doesn't have the magnet on it right now, but it falls off, it falls out of sequence. It's just a pain in the butt. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna cut the wires on this. You can hear the pump going. Now the pump is off because we done cut our wires. I left enough tail on this that we'll be able to use it for something. We can use it for a switch on the grain drill or what have you. It comes with this magnet right here, and every so often the magnet falls out of place and you're having to adjust it. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this bracket here, which this bracket is a part number A71505. We're going to put that on the row unit. And then we've got this switch here. This switch is open when it's pressed in, and it's closed when the button is out. So it's kind of like a dimmer switch, and the way that works. So what this is this is going to bolt right to the parallel arm right here like this. It's going to bolt to there. This switch is going, I need two hands here. This switch is going to bolt into that hole. You can kind of see that. So we'll show you what it looks like. We're going to cut this plug off, and then we're going to run wires to it. I guess I didn't know which row I'd put it on. I guess I'm going to put it on this one. I could put it on that one, but then we're having to fight the tire. So we'll put that on here, and we'll show you what things look like when we get it together here. Okay, so we have our bracket mounted, and this is the little switch here, and that's going to go in against the frame, and then we have to adjust that so that button is pushed in. And then when this lifts up, this row unit is going to come away from that button, and that's when it's going to turn on. So we'll go ahead and get this plugged in, hooked up, and of course adjusted. We'll just crimp our wires on now. You can almost hear the motor from here. So that motor is on right now. We'll get this crimped down, then we've got to shrink this. And it's on because this row unit would be away from this switch. So if you guys can hear that motor is running, button is pushed in, it's off. Running, off. Actually, before I put this in there, we're going to shrink wrap this, heat shrink it rather. This is Jared's Hercules heat gun, which seems to work decent. So we'll go ahead and get this shrunk down, and then we'll show you mounting it to the bracket. Alright, so we've got our heat shrink on there. Get our switch installed here. I probably shouldn't have put the bracket on here first. There. That would be easier to put that on later. Get this adjusted. Actually, it would be easier to, we got to take this off and tighten up our jam knot. Alright, so we've got our jam knot tight. Again, this is easier if the bracket's not installed first. Put your switch on. Get it over into place. Then we, of course, might need to adjust this a little bit as we go. We'll want this to go on just as soon as the unit hits the ground. So we don't want any delay in that, but we don't want to be smashing this either. So that is installed. We'll get some zip ties, of course. Zip tie this up into place like so, and this is going to conclude this project. This is all mucho done. All right. Let's clean up our tools here. I need to get another wrench on the back side and tighten that up a little bit. But you can hear that the motor is not running. And then of course, as soon as this row unit goes down, this is gonna come away from that button and boom, gonna turn it on. All right, so let's get this folded up. We actually have to run a grease gun around it. I just want to hit everything one more time, air pressure the tires, and then we will put some water in this, run it through the system and see how everything does. and then we can load it with fertilizer and seed.